Okay, hello. This time we're going to call this one diagram 2, and what we're going to do is we're going to reference three figures that are the same height, but they're in different parts of the picture plane, meaning one's going to be further back, one's kind of in the middle, and one will be forward, and we're going to talk about how to do that with reference pointing. So this is about reference points and achieving things of equal scale in different parts of the picture. Okay, so I'm going to start out with a basic premise. I've already drawn a horizon line. So I'll call that the HL over here. That also happens to be my eye level because we're going to be in 1 and 2 point for quite a while. So at this point, the horizon line will equal the eye level. We're not going to bother setting up the cone and all the other stuff we had in the physical walkthrough yet because we're going to get right to just really simple breakdowns of referencing and scale in the next few diagrams. So we're just going to forego that and just deal with direct pictures like you would when you sketched. But we're still going to use T-squares and triangles and such because we want to be precise and make sure we convey it exactly as to how we do this. Okay, so the premise is it's your composition, and you might decide, well, I want a figure of kind of standing in the middle of somewhere like maybe right here. So I want one figure that big. That's a purely random compositional decision. I want to start there with a figure. You might be supposing because that's where you want it compositionally because you have a frame worked out and it's, proportion and everything like that. So I'm going to go ahead with my T-square and I'm going to go ahead and put in a little base and a little height for that figure. I'll draw my little midpoint there, that pelvis, little waistline. I'll go ahead and put in a simple head, simple shoulders, kind of sitting in pockets there. Draw out some legs, have some simple shoes. Very, very simple diagram. All right. All right, so we have figure A. Figure A could be 7 foot tall, 5 foot. Let's just call him 5'8", or this figure 5'8". The idea is we're going to replicate his height with different positions on the picture plane. So, figure A. Now I say, well, I randomly want to put someone over here that's a little farther back. I think about right here feels right. So I'll go ahead and say I want them only being smaller, being here. I can't decide their height because I have to reference that. So I'll go put their base on, just like I started with the base of figure A. I'm going to say this is where base of figure B is going to be. I'll go ahead and make it official and say, okay, they're standing right there on the ground. I'll go ahead and put with my triangle, I'll go ahead and put an absolute vertical just for the heck of it. Remember, these lines that I'm setting up for you are all cobweb thin and like basically invisible and very light ticks when you draw. And then of course you do your drawing style over it or whatever your art is, your painting, it doesn't matter. I'm making it very, very clear as a lesson, obviously, to make it a good diagram. So there's the vertical. We don't know how tall figure B will be quite in that space yet until we do some referencing. So now, because I already have established figure A, I can simply reference B off A, and we'll start doing that together. I'll pick my red pencil up, and I'm going to go from the base of A through the beginning base of B. Even though I set B randomly and I set A randomly, now I've got some things that will actually help us. So base A through base B, I'll go ahead and draw, and that line will lead us to what's called a reference plane on the horizon line, or reference point, I should say, excuse me. We'll call that reference point number 1. And that's possible because this is a flat ground plane, and because the horizon represents the infinity of the ground plane, meaning the sky, I'm going to make a plane that goes on forever between A and B and then goes on forever, and that becomes a reference point. It's actually a vanishing point, but we'll call it a reference point because that's the purpose we're using it for. Now, how do I figure out the height of B, which is the goal? Oh, well, I've already got established figure A, and I've got figure A's height. So I'm going to go from figure A's height with my red pencil again, and I'm going to go ahead and pass through the vertical plane of where B wants to be from the height of A to the reference point, all three of those points. So here we come down. Arrow going to the reference point. Where that line crosses the vertical of where I want B to be will represent their height. So we've just got the height, the proper height of figure B standing that far back from figure A in the picture plane. So now we can go ahead and draw figure B in. Top, bottom, about halfway point for the pelvis. Go ahead and draw a slightly smaller head in. Little pockets. Shoes. So again, these figures are standing straight up. If someone was leaning over, you'd probably take their real standing height, and then you'd have to then proportionally go less for if they were doing something else. But you're starting with a full standing figure at its full height is easier, because then you can proportionally make that person smaller depending on what action they're doing. So now we've got a real figure B, a real figure A. They're both the same height as each other. They're just standing in different parts of the picture plane. And that was done by referencing. We first established the base of A through the base of B after creating the area we wanted B to be in, and we made a reference point. We then came back from the top of A to cross the vertical that was unfinished of figure B to the reference point. That gave us figure B's height. Now we're going to say we want to add a third person of the same height of these two people. I'm going to go, all right, I'm going to do it somewhere over here. And it's going to be larger. They're going to be further forward than either figure A or B. I don't want to put the person compositionally really dead even with them right here. That would kind of create a pattern or a tangent I wouldn't want. So I'm going to put the figure a little closer so there's a smaller gap in between these two, something like that. So I'll just sketch that idea in. But let's see, how much larger do I want them? I don't know, maybe quite a bit larger. Here we go. So I'm going to say that's the base of C right away. Just say, okay, I want a figure C sitting there. Let me go ahead and put in the base officially with my T-square just to be official. Then I'll go ahead and use my triangle to draw their vertical. And I'll go way further than I need to, or I think I need to. Same idea now. How do I get the height of C? Well, I could reference through A and go way over here if I wanted to. That's pretty far. That might be off your page. So since I already have an established B that's also the correct height for a figure at their position, I'm just going to go ahead and reference C through B instead of A because it's more convenient. I could do this, but it goes out here a bit. But just for the sake of good practice, I'll say I'll pick the most convenient one that's in the picture. So I'm going to take base C through base B to establish reference point 2. I'm going to do that with a blue pencil. Base C through base B gives me another reference point on the horizon into infinity, and I'll call that reference point number 2. Okay? Now, same thing as we did before. How do I establish the height of figure C? Well, I already am referencing the base of B. Now I have to reference the complete height of B to get it. So I go back from the reference point with my blue pencil, through the head from the reference point to create the height of C. I'll mark there with my blue. And there we have it. So I'll go ahead and mark what I think is about halfway down again, something like that. Waistline might be there. I'll make the head bigger this time. I'll go ahead and make the shoulders. Draw down real quick. Okay. Arms in pocket again. Okay, so there is figure C, which would be the same height as figure B and A. And I've done that with another reference plane, but I had to start out from the base of C, go through the base of B to create the first line to make the reference point 2. Then I could come back from reference point 2 through the total height of B, which was already established, to mark off at the vertical of C to get the height of C. I've created effectively 2 planes that you could imagine are made of plexiglass that are tinted a color. I'm going to go ahead and let anybody catch up that's behind. I'm going to go ahead and tint in the first plane we put in to get A to B referenced. Real simple shading, no big deal. I just wanted to make it dead clear when you go back later. Remember, this is about you guys drawing and taking clear notes from what I'm saying, so please be pausing the lecture occasionally to write down notes down here in your drawing, or in your own way that makes sense to you about the process. That's why I'm going to repeat it even one more time before we leave it, so that it makes it clear. all right, because it's easier for you to pause and write and for me to just make the points clearly verbally. That will get us to more material more quickly for a more complete lecture series. Okay, there's that plane that I was talking about for going from A to B to the reference point. It's like a standing thin plexiglass plane. And now we can do the blue one, overlapping that one as well. And I'll just do it lightly so it doesn't get too confusing. But these are where those two planes overlap. Okay. And I'll go ahead and darken up figure B a little. Try to get out of your way here with my head. All right. There is B. So once again, we wanted 3 people standing in the picture plane at different distances from us, the viewer, and I wanted them to be all the same height. How do I achieve that? I established A compositionally, saying that's where I want A. I then said, okay, there's A. I want to now create B. I put the position of the feet only with a vertical only for B because I had to make a reference point from A's base to B's base to make reference point 1. Come back through to A's height and I get the height of B. Now I've got 2 figures totally drawn out that are in proportional height to each other depending on their position in the picture plane. Then I wanted to create figure C. I made the base, made the vertical, decided instead of going through A way over here, we decided to go through B. Base of C, just made it up, through B to make reference point 2. Then, because B was already established, I could come back from the reference point 2 to the top of B's head, which was already established, to strike and make the height of C. Even though we just started C at the bottom, we couldn't get their height till we referenced it through figure B. And that's basically it. You can do this all day long, essentially, with many different ways. Objects, trucks, cars, anything, trees. It doesn't matter what you're drawing. As long as they have height, width, and volume and space, you can reference one similar sized object at the same angle to you to another one all day long, all across the picture, anywhere. Rise them up and rise them down. As long as they don't come forward or backward, things stay the same size. The reason these guys are different sizes is because they're at different points in the picture plane. They've come forward and they've gone back, and that's why we needed to use the reference point system. Okay? All right. Then we'll get on to some other diagrams now. All righty? Okay.